Yeah, g'day YouTubers. Tinker O'Toole again here with another video. Today we're going to talk about narrow kerf chains. So there's a lot of information floating out there that's totally incorrect. So hopefully I can sort of put you on the right track when we talk about the so-called narrow kerf chain and where to use it. Because that's what you see on a lot of videos out there and information saying, hey, this is higher speed, this works better, blah, blah, blah. And a good example of narrow kerf chain would be in the Stihl's Hexa. About 4.1 millimetre width is the tooth, where a standard tooth is about 4.5 millimetres. So when we talk about kerf, for those that don't know, the kerf is the width that the chain makes in the wood. So the two teeth, left and right, make a width. And this is going to be really interesting to explain, but it's pretty straightforward. And it'll get rid of a few misconceptions that are out there. So at the top, we've got 404 chain, 3/8 chain, 0.325, 3/8 low profile. I got 1/4 inch, but I don't have 1/4 inch chains. But I've got 1/4 inch Pico. That's a little battery hand operated chainsaws. Now, narrow kerf. Anything below 404 is narrow kerf. Anything below 3/8 is narrow kerf. Anything below 0.325 is narrow kerf. And so on and so on. So when you talk narrow kerf, all as you're doing is really comparing one chain against the other. So let's go back to 404. 404 chain, use that on 500i, MS660, MS880. 3/8 chain, use that on any saw from 60 cc's upward. 0.325, use that on any saw about 45 cc's to around about 55 cc's, even 60 cc's you can use that. 3/8 low profile, use that anywhere from around 30 cc's to about 40 cc's. 1/4 inch, a lot of the 1/4 inch stuff could be battery, or it could be very, very small stuff, even 25 cc's. And 1/4 inch Pico is used on little handheld battery type stuff. So when we talk narrow kerf, all as we're saying is that the chain's smaller, the width. And that's governed generally by horsepower. So depending on how many cc's your chainsaw is, will determine as to what chain it's got, and whatever chain that you got, it's going to be smaller. The one below will always be smaller than the one above, and 404 being the biggest. So narrow kerf means nothing. It's just a smaller chain, as simple as that. And that smaller chain is suited to a smaller chainsaw. So don't think that you're going to go out and put some narrow kerf chain on and, hey, this is going to cut fantastic. Because the moment that you start to use a narrow kerf chain on a longer bar, you start to run into chip clearance problems. So, yeah, an example of that would be this 3/8 standard chain. You could put that on a 36-inch bar, not a problem. If you were to put 0.325 on a 36-inch bar, because it's a narrower kerf and it's a smaller chain, you're most likely going to have chip clearance problems. So that's where the larger chain dominates on a larger bar. And that especially is the case on the 404, where we could be using that up onto really large bars, in excess of 40-inch, 48-inch bars. We're governed by the power of the motor. And in the case of 404, if you wanted to use a really large bar on a 404, we would generally use a skip chain. And we can use skip chains in 3/8 as well. Now, the exception where they made a narrow kerf chain for standard 3/8 was in Hexa. The kerf, or the width of the tooth on a standard 3/8, is about 4.5 millimeters, whereas the Hexa is 4.1. So overall, the Hexa's got a narrower kerf and will cut a little bit faster. But you wouldn't be using Hexa on a 40-inch or a 50-inch bar, because you'd be starting to run into chip clearance. And that's where 404 chain comes in. Much, much larger chain, superior chip clearance. You put that on a longer bar. So, there's an old saying, horses for courses. This is exactly the same. There's a chain for a chainsaw. Or as I said, 404 is the largest until you go to 1/2 inch, but generally speaking, 404 is the largest. And as I said before, we would use this on 80 cc's and upwards. On your 3/8, we'll use this 50 cc's and upwards, 0.325, 45 cc's and upwards, 3/8 low profile, 30 cc's and upwards, and 1/4 inch below 30 cc's, and 1/4 inch pico. We're going to use that on battery type things. So I hope that explains narrow kerf. There's nothing special about narrow kerf. And as I said, the only one that may sort of come into the picture is the Hexa. And as far as I know, they don't use Hexa on 50-inch bars because you'd have chip clearance problems. And what you would do then anyway, though, is that you'd run a skip chain, full skip chain. So Hexa's only for small bars, say 20, 25 inch. Yeah. The moment you start to get into 36-inch bars, you're going to use skip chain. So I hope that's got rid of all the myths about narrow kerf. So just to briefly recap, every chain below this 404 is a narrow kerf, every chain below this 3/8 is a narrow kerf, and so on and so on. The chains are made specifically for the engine size. It's as simple as that. So you're not going to go out there and say, hey, I want a narrow kerf chain and it's going to cut better than anything else. Ain't going to happen. So I hope that displaces that myth. Horses for courses, it is what it is. And I hope that information that I've presented has cleared up a few myths about narrow kerf chains. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.